The hum of the grand ballroom was a symphony of clinking glasses, forced laughter, and the low murmur of corporate small talk. I stood near the entrance, my fingers tightening around the stem of my champagne flute, watching as the room glittered under the chandeliers like a gilded cage. For 10 years, I had been the invisible hand behind Sterling Enterprises. The one who stayed up until 3 a.m. drafting contracts. The one who smoothed over investor tantrums. The one who quietly fixed Daniel's mistakes before the board could notice. And yet, when the annual company dinner rolled around, I was always just Daniel Sterling's wife. Decorative, secondary, forgettable. I took a slow sip of champagne, the bubbles sharp against my tongue, and scanned the crowd. Daniel was holding court near the center of the room, his arms slung around Lena Carter's waist like she was a prize he'd just won. My stomach twisted. Lena, his secretary, was everything I wasn't anymore. 28, effortlessly beautiful, with a laugh like wind chimes and a way of tilting her head that made men lean in closer. I had seen the way Daniel's eyes lingered on her, the way his fingers brushed hers just a second too long when she handed him documents. I had told myself I was imagining things, that I was just tired, paranoid. But then, the ballroom doors swung open again and the room fell into a hush. Daniel and Lena walked in. Together. His lips were still pressed to hers, her arms looped around his neck like she belonged there. A few employees clapped awkwardly, thinking it was some kind of joke. Others froze, their eyes darting to me, waiting for my reaction. I didn't move. The champagne flute in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out the whispers. And then, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out with numb fingers. A notification from the clinic. Test results. Positive. The words blurred. I had taken the test this morning, too nervous to even tell Daniel yet. I had imagined his face lighting up, the way it had when we first talked about starting a family years ago. Now the irony was so cruel it was almost funny. A slow, cold clarity settled over me. I set my glass down on a passing waiter's tray. And then I walked toward the stage. The microphone screeched as I picked it up, cutting through the murmurs. Every head turned. Daniel's smile faltered. Lena's grip on his arm tightened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Congratulations, Daniel, I said, my tone smooth as polished steel. You've just made my resignation speech very easy. The room went utterly silent. And then I destroyed him. The silence in that ballroom was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, some wide with shock, others already glinting with morbid curiosity. Daniel's face went slack, his grip on Lena's waist loosening as if he'd been electrocuted. I let the moment stretch, savoring it. Then I tapped the microphone again. While you were all celebrating another successful year, I said, my voice carrying effortlessly across the room, I was finalizing the Vanguard Holdings merger. The one our CEO declared impossible just 3 months ago. A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. The Vanguard deal was the crown jewel of the industry. A billion-dollar acquisition that would cement Sterling Enterprises as the dominant force in our sector. Daniel had tried and failed to secure it for years. His face darkened. Evelyn, he said sharply, stepping forward, this isn't the time. Oh, it's exactly the time. I swiped open my phone and projected the signed contract onto the screens flanking the stage. The Sterling Vanguard logo gleamed back at the room, undeniable. Signed this afternoon. Pending board approval, of course. The room erupted. Daniel looked like he'd been gutted. His mouth opened then closed. Lena's manicured nails dug into his arm, her pretty face pinched with panic. I leaned into the mic. Funny thing about mergers, they come with audits. Thorough ones. I let my gaze drift to Lena. Especially when there are irregularities in executive spending. Her breath hitched. I'd seen the receipts, designer bags, luxury hotels, all charged to company accounts. All approved by Daniel. A board member stood abruptly. What the hell is she talking about, Daniel? Daniel's jaw clenched. This is a private matter. It's very public now, I said lightly. Then I turned back to the crowd. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO. But don't worry, I've left detailed instructions for my successor. I paused. Oh, and Lena? She flinched. I smiled. HR has your termination paperwork ready. Security will escort you out tonight. The room exploded into chaos. Daniel lunged toward the stage, But two board members intercepted him, their faces thunderous. Lena burst into tears. Me. I set the microphone down and walked out, the weight of a decade's silence finally off my shoulders. The cold night air hit my face like a slap as I pushed through the hotel's revolving doors. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the adrenaline still coursing through me. I had just burned my entire life to the ground in under 5 minutes. And it felt exhilarating. A black town car idled at the curb exactly where I'd requested. The driver stepped out, but before he could open the door, another figure emerged from the shadows near the car. Nathaniel Cole. Of course he'd be here. He leaned against the car door, arms crossed, his sharp gray suit barely visible under the dim streetlights. The smirk on his face was infuriatingly familiar. That, he said, was the most expensive divorce filing I've ever witnessed. I exhaled sharply, my breath fogging in the cold air. I didn't see you inside. I had a front row seat in the lobby bar. He tilted his head. You were magnificent. I clenched my jaw. Nathaniel Cole, CEO of Cole Industries, my husband's biggest rival, and the man who had spent the last decade trying to destroy Sterling Enterprises. He was also, inexplicably, the only person who had seen this coming. Get in the car, Evelyn, he said, opening the door. We have a deal to finalize. Flashback. 3 months earlier, the first time Nathaniel Cole approached me, I nearly threw my wine in his face. It was at an industry gala one Daniel had skipped, claiming a migraine. I'd been nursing a martini near the balcony when Nathaniel slid into the seat beside me, his presence as subtle as a lit fuse. You look miserable, he'd said. I didn't bother glancing at him. And you look like you're fishing for insider information. He laughed, low and unbothered. I don't need insider information to know your husband is running Sterling into the ground. That got my attention. Nathaniel swirled his scotch, watching me over the rim of his glass. He turned down the Vanguard deal, didn't he? I stiffened. That negotiation had been private. Because he's scared, Nathaniel continued. Scared of risk. Scared of looking weak. And scared, he added, his voice dropping, of you outshining him. The truth of it stung. I forced a smile. Is this your idea of a recruitment pitch? No. He set his glass down. This is me telling you that when you're ready to stop wasting your talent on a man who doesn't deserve it, I'll be waiting with a contract. Then he walked away, leaving me with the unsettling realization that Nathaniel Cole saw me more clearly than my own husband ever had. Present. The town car glided through the city, the skyline blurring past the tinted windows. Nathaniel handed me a file. Your terms, he said. Head of mergers and acquisitions. Full autonomy. A seat on the board. And, he tapped the last page. The Vanguard deal stays under your control. I scanned the documents. It was everything I'd wanted at Sterling, everything Daniel had denied me. Why? Asked finally. Nathaniel studied me, his gaze unreadable. Because I don't believe in wasting good talent. Pause. And because I've always enjoyed watching Daniel Sterling lose. I almost laughed. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from the security team at Sterling Enterprises. Lena Carter has been escorted from the premises. Per your instructions, her access has been revoked. A second message followed. This one from Daniel. We need to talk. I turned the phone off. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Regrets. I looked out the window at the city lights, at the life I was leaving behind. Not a single one. The next morning. The headlines were already exploding by dawn. Sterling CEO's affair exposed at company dinner. Evelyn Sterling resigns, takes billion-dollar deal with her. Cole Industries poaches Sterling's mastermind. My lawyer called at 7 a.m. Daniel's panicking. The board is demanding an emergency meeting. Good, I said, sipping my coffee. Then another call. Unknown number. I answered. You bitch. Lena's voice was raw with tears. You ruined everything. I smiled. No, Lena. You did the moment you thought you could take what was mine. I hung up. Nathaniel's text came through next. Boardroom in an hour. Or something devastating. I already had the perfect outfit. The glass doors of Cole Industries headquarters hissed open as I stepped into the lobby, the morning sun glinting off the steel and marble atrium. Every head turned, whispers trailing in my wake like ripples in water. There she is. That's Evelyn Sterling. No, just Evelyn now, apparently. I kept my chin level, my stride measured. The black tailored suit I'd chosen was armor in its purest form, Sharp lines, no jewelry, nothing to soften the message. Nathaniel had asked for devastating. He was about to get it. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent save for the hum of machinery. When the doors slid open, Nathaniel was waiting, leaning against the conference table with a cup of coffee in hand. His gaze flickered over me, appreciative. "You look like vengeance personified," he remarked. "Good." I took the coffee from him. "Because I'm not done yet." He smirked and gestured to the screen behind him where a live news feed played silently. The headline screamed, "Sterling Enterprises in free fall. Stock plummets 20%. A smaller ticker below it read, "Daniel Sterling names interim CEO in emergency board meeting." I froze. Nathaniel tapped a key and the feed switched to a press conference outside Sterling's offices. Daniel stood at the podium, his usual charm replaced by a strained smile. And beside him, Lena. My fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "Oh, this is rich," Nathaniel murmured. Daniel's voice crackled through the speakers. "Effective immediately, Lena Carter will serve as acting CEO. Her work ethic and dedication to this company." I laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. Nathaniel muted the feed. "He's panicking. Promoting his mistress to save face." He shook his head. "Even I didn't think he'd be that stupid." I set the coffee down, my mind racing. This wasn't just an insult. It was a gift. Lena had no experience, no credentials. Just a pretty face and a willingness to sleep with the boss. The board would revolt. The investors would flee. And I had an idea. 6 months earlier. "You can't be serious." Daniel tossed the report onto his desk, rubbing his temples. "Lena's proposal makes no sense." I leaned against the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Lena had pitched a half-baked expansion plan at the morning meeting, one that would have sunk us in debt within a year. The board had humored her because Daniel humored her. "She's eager," I said carefully. "But eagerness isn't strategy." Daniel sighed. "Just mentor her, Evelyn. She looks up to you." The irony was almost funny. Lena didn't want mentorship. She wanted my office. My title. My husband. No. She could have all of it. Present. The trap. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick email to my former assistant at Sterling, one of the few people still loyal to me. "Release the files." Then I turned to Nathaniel. "Call the Vanguard team. Tell them I want to move the signing ceremony to this afternoon." His brow arched. "You're going to upstage him on purpose." "No," I smiled. "I'm going to let Lena upstage him for me." 3 hours later. The signing room at Vanguard Holdings was all glass and polished wood, the skyline sprawling beyond the windows. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras trained on the table where Nathaniel and I sat opposite Vanguard's view. A murmur rippled through the crowd as I pulled out the pen. My pen, the one Daniel had given me on our 5th anniversary. Engraved. "To the woman who makes the impossible happen." I signed my name with a flourish. Flashbulbs exploded. Then chaos. A reporter's phone buzzed. Then another. Heads bent together, whispers spreading like wildfire. Nathaniel's lips curved as he subtly slid his phone toward me. The alert read, "Leaked. Sterling Enterprises internal emails reveal CEO Lena Carter approved fraudulent expense reports. SEC investigation imminent." Attached was a screenshot of Lena's email chain with Daniel, her blatant approval of doctored financials, his careless handle-it reply. I hadn't even needed to fabricate evidence. I just needed to wait for her to hang herself. The fallout. By evening, the headlines had shifted. Sterling's interim coup implicated in financial scandal. Daniel Sterling subpoenaed by Vanguard deal sends stock soaring. My phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I answered. "You set me up." Lena's voice was shrill, hysterical. "Those emails were private." I sipped my wine. "Funny how that works, isn't it? Privacy." A choked sob. "Daniel's blaming me." "Of course he is." I cut her off. "That's what men like him do, Lena. They take. And when they're caught." I let the words sink in. "They throw away whatever's no longer useful." Silence. Then the line went dead. Nathaniel appeared at my shoulder, handing me a fresh glass. "To the future," he said, clicking his drink against mine. I looked out at the city, my city now. "To the future," I agreed. The penthouse was too quiet. Moonlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting silver streaks across the polished concrete. I stood at the glass, staring down at the city that had once been Daniel's kingdom, and was now in many ways mine. The Coal Vanguard merger had closed in record time. Sterling Enterprises stock was in free fall. Lena? Well, the SEC didn't take kindly to financial fraud. A knock at the door. I didn't turn. It's open. Nathaniel stepped inside, his footsteps muffled by the thick rug. I could see his reflection in the glass. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, the usual sharp edges of him softened by the late hour. "You've been avoiding the press," he said. "I've been busy." "Bullshit." He moved closer, stopping just behind me. "You orchestrated the most brutal corporate takedown in a decade, and now you're hiding in the dark like you lost." I exhaled slowly. My hands, usually so steady, trembled faintly at my sides. Nathaniel noticed. Of course he did. "Evelyn." His voice dropped. "What did you do?" I turned then, meeting his gaze. What I had to. 2 weeks before the company dinner. The waiting room was sterile, impersonal. A too loud TV played a morning talk show in the corner, the hosts laughing about something inane. I sat stiffly in the plastic chair, my nails digging into my palms. The nurse called my name. The doctor's office was small, cramped. She was kind-eyed, her voice gentle as she slid the ultrasound results toward me. "The pregnancy is viable, but given your history of ectopic scarring, carrying to term would be high risk." I already knew. I'd known the moment I saw the positive test. "There are other options," the doctor said carefully. "If you're not ready." "I'm ready," I lied. "But some choices aren't about readiness. They're about survival." "Present." Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. The pregnancy. Not a question. I didn't flinch. "Gone." His jaw tightened. "Before or after the dinner?" "After." I walked to the bar cart, pouring myself a finger of whiskey I wouldn't drink. The morning of the Vanguard signing. The pieces clicked together in his mind. The slight pallor I'd blamed on stress, the way I'd disappeared for 2 hours that afternoon. "Daniel never knew," he said slowly. "No," I set the glass down. "And he never will." Nathaniel swore under his breath, raking a hand through his hair. "Christ, Evelyn. You could have died." I smiled bitterly. "Statistically unlikely. Just painful." The unspoken truth hung between us. I'd chosen the merger over the baby. Over the last tether to a man who'd already betrayed me. Nathaniel stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then abruptly he crossed the room and yanked open the balcony doors. Cold night air rushed in, sharp as a blade. "Come here," he said. I didn't move. "Evelyn." His voice was rough. "Look at what you built." The city glittered below us. Coal Industries towers, Vanguard's sprawling campus, Sterling's faltering lights in the distance. "You think I regret it?" My voice cracked. "I don't." "I know." He turned to face me. "But you're allowed to grieve it anyway." Something in my chest splintered. I stepped onto the balcony. The wind tore at my clothes, my hair. Nathaniel didn't touch me, didn't offer empty comfort. He just stood there, a silent witness to the wreckage. And for the first time since walking onto that stage, I let myself cry. The next morning, the headline was everywhere. Sterling's board moves to oust Daniel. Coal Industries eyes hostile takeover. My phone buzzed incessantly, reporters, former colleagues, even a few board members begging me to come home. I silenced them all. Nathaniel found me in the penthouse gym, pounding the hell out of a punching bag. "You've seen the news," he said. "I landed a final, brutal strike." "I have. The board's offering you Daniel's seat." I wiped my brow, breathing hard. "I don't want it." "Then what do you want?" The question hung in the air. I looked at him, really looked. At the man who'd handed me the knife to gut my own life. Who hadn't flinched when I used it. "Something new," I said at last. Nathaniel nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "Good." He tossed me a towel. "Then let's build it." The first warning came as a missed call from an unknown number at 3:17 a.m. I let it ring through, rolling over in the silk sheets of Nathaniel's spare bedroom, the one I'd commandeered as my own since the fallout. The penthouse was too large for one person, and after weeks of sharing the space, we'd settled into an unspoken rhythm. His razor left beside my moisturizer in the bathroom, his coffee blend swapped for my preferred dark roast, the quiet understanding that neither of us slept much these days. The second call came at 5:42 a.m. This time I answered. "Miss Sterling." A woman's voice, clipped and professional. "This is Marcia Lynn from the Financial Chronicle. We're running a story this morning about your, medical history, and I wanted to give you a chance to comment before." I hung up. My fingers flew across my phone, pulling up the morning's news alerts. And there was. Leaked medical report. Evelyn Sterling terminated pregnancy weeks before blowing up Sterling Enterprises. The byline? Anonymous. But I didn't need a name to know who'd orchestrated this. One day after the company dinner. The clinic had been too exposed, so I'd paid cash for a private hospital suite under a false name. The doctor, a discreet referral from Nathaniel's network, had been kind but distant, her gloved hands efficient as she prepped the four. "You're sure?" she'd asked one last time. I'd stared at the ceiling. Yes. The drugs had burned going in. I'd bitten my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Present. Nathaniel's bedroom door flew open just as my phone started vibrating with another call. He took one look at my face and grabbed his tablet, pulling up the article in seconds. His jaw tightened as he read. "Daniel." Obviously. My voice sounded strange, detached. "He's trying to spin this as me being, what? Unstable? A monster who threw away a child for revenge." Nathaniel's thumb brushed across the screen, zooming in on a damning detail. Sources confirmed the pregnancy was Mr. Sterling's. "He's making it personal," he said quietly. I laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. It was always personal. The article was already trending. The comments were worse. "Cold bitch. No wonder her husband cheated. Calculating enough to kill her own baby for a business deal." I set the phone down carefully, my hands steady. "Call legal. I want every outlet that ran this story sued into oblivion." Nathaniel caught my wrist as I turned away. "Evelyn." His grip was firm. "We need to address this head-on." "No," I yanked free. "I don't owe the world an explanation. This isn't about the world." His voice dropped. "It's about you. If you don't control the narrative, Daniel will." I whirled on him. "And what narrative would you suggest? A tearful press conference? A sob story about how I sacrificed my child for the greater good?" My voice broke. "That baby was never going to survive, Nathaniel. The doctors told me that from the start." The admission hung between us, raw and bleeding. Nathaniel went very still. "You never said it was high risk." "Because it didn't matter." The words tore out of me. Dead in a month or dead in 9. Either way, I wasn't bringing a child into that mess. Not with Daniel as its father. Not with me as its mother. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathaniel picked up his phone. "Get dressed." I blinked. "What?" "We're holding a press conference at Cole Industries in 1 hour." His eyes burned into mine. "And you're going to tell them exactly what kind of man Daniel Sterling really is." The Cole Industries lobby was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as I took the podium. Nathaniel stood just behind me, a silent sentinel. I didn't have notes. Didn't need them. "3 things, I said, my voice carrying across the room. "First, my medical history was illegally obtained and published without consent. The lawyers handling the lawsuits will be contacting each of your editors shortly." A few journalists paled. "Second," I tapped the podium screen, pulling up a document. "This is the original ultrasound report from my 6-week scan. Note the doctor's prognosis: non-viable pregnancy with high risk of maternal hemorrhage." The room erupted. I waited for the noise to die down. And third. Another tap. The screen changed to a series of emails. Daniel's private account. These were sent 2 days after my diagnosis. Care to guess who he was arranging a romantic getaway with while I was scheduling my procedure? The crowd gasped. Lena's name and a hotel confirmation glowed on the screen for all to see. "So by all means," I said softly, "let's talk about who really threw away a family for selfishness." I walked off the stage to stunned silence. Nathaniel caught up with me in the elevator. "You've been holding on to those emails for a while." I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "Insurance." He studied me. "You okay?" The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. No, I admitted. But I will be. The summons arrived by courier at 7:03 a.m., thick ivory cardstock with the Sterling Enterprises logo embossed in gold. You are hereby requested to attend the emergency shareholder meeting. I crumpled the letter in my fist before finishing it. The audacity of Daniel summoning me, as if I were still some subordinate he could order around, sent white-hot fury licking up my spine. Nathaniel snatched the paper from my hand, flattening it against the marble kitchen island. His eyes scanned the text, lips thinning. He's invoking the marital shares clause. He can't. My voice came out razor-edged. Our divorce isn't finalized. Exactly. Nathaniel's finger tapped the relevant paragraph. Which means legally he still controls 15% of your voting rights through the joint holdings. A cold laugh escaped me. Daniel had ignored every legal notice about our divorce proceedings for weeks, only to weaponize our marital status now. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen then smirked. The board just leaked the agenda. He's proposing to sell Sterling's core assets to coal industries. My breath caught. He's what? Desperate. Nathaniel slid the phone toward me. Sterling's stock has dropped 65% since the scandal broke. He's trying to offload the company before it's worthless. I stared at the document. This wasn't just a surrender. It was a trap. One designed to force me into the same room as him, where he could humiliate me in front of every major investor and journalist in the city. I met Nathaniel's gaze. When's the meeting? Noon today. I pushed back from the counter. Then I'd better get dressed. Flashback. The first shareholder meeting. 5 years earlier. The boardroom had smelled of cigar smoke and expensive cologne. I'd spent weeks preparing the quarterly reports, only to be relegated to the spouse's seating area, while Daniel took center stage. Mrs. Sterling makes a lovely ornament, one investor had chuckled, but let's leave the numbers to the men, shall we? Daniel hadn't corrected him. That night I drafted my first secret takeover plan. A contingency I'd update like a living document year after year. Now, it was time to execute it. Present. Sterling Tower's lobby was a war zone of reporters and protesters. Camera flashes exploded as I stepped out of the town car, Nathaniel at my elbow. Remember, he murmured. He wants you emotional. Don't give him the satisfaction. I adjusted the cuffs of my blood-red blazer, a deliberate choice, and strode inside. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was suffocating. The doors opened to a gauntlet of stairs. Board members I'd worked with for years, investors who'd once begged for my advice, all now watching like vultures circling carrion. And at the head of the table, Daniel. He looked haggard, his tailored suit hanging slightly loose. But his eyes burned with venom as they locked onto mine. Evelyn. His voice dripped false warmth. How generous of you to join us. I didn't sit. Let's skip the performance, Daniel. You want to sell the company? Name your price. A murmur rippled through the room. Daniel's smile turned knife-sharp. He tapped a key and the screens lit up with a presentation titled, Sterling Coal Merger, A New Beginning. As acting CEO, he began, I propose transferring all intellectual property and client contracts to coal industries for $2.7 billion. A steal given current valuations. Nathaniel stiffened beside me. It was a steal, one that would make Daniel billions while leaving Sterling's employees with nothing. There's just one complication. Daniel's gaze slid to me. Per our marital agreement, my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, controls 22% of voting shares. And I suspect she'll object to this sale, given her new loyalties. The room erupted. You bastard, Nathaniel growled. Daniel ignored him, advancing toward me. But here's the thing, Evelyn. Those shares. They're marital assets. And until the divorce is finalized. He produced a document stamped with a judge's seal. I have an injunction freezing your voting rights. The room gasped. I didn't. Because I'd been waiting for this move. Funny you should mention marital assets. I opened my briefcase and slid a thick folder across the table. Page 37, Daniel. The post-nup you insisted on after the first time you cheated. His brow furrowed. The clause, I continued sweetly, that voids all pre-existing share agreements in the event of proven infidelity. Daniel lunged for the document. That's not. Not enforceable? I nodded to the door where 3 men in suits had entered. Ask your lawyers. Oh wait, they just quit. The lead attorney, Sterling's former general counsel, stepped forward. Effective immediately, Ms. Sterling's voting rights are reinstated. And as the majority shareholder group has just informed us. He paused dramatically. They've called a vote of no confidence in Mr. Sterling's leadership. Daniel's face went sheet white. You bitch. Tisk. I tapped my phone and every screen in the room switched to a live feed of the New York Stock Exchange. Watch your language. The markets are listening. The ticker flashed. Sterling Enterprises halted pending announcement. The Coal Industries launches hostile takeover bid at $9.87 per share. The room exploded into chaos. Daniel lunged at me, only to be blocked by security. You'll ruin this company. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper only he could hear. No, Daniel. I'm just doing what you taught me, sacrificing everything for the deal. Then I turned to the stunned shareholders. The vote is called. All in favor of removing Daniel Sterling as CEO. Every hand in the room shot up. The silence in Sterling Tower's boardroom was absolute. Every eye was locked on the voting results displayed across the screens, 98.6% in favor of Daniel's removal. Even his most loyal sycophants had abandoned him. Daniel stood frozen at the head of the table, his knuckles pressed white against the mahogany. This isn't over, he rasped. It was over the moment you kissed Lena in front of 300 people, I said, calm as shattered glass. Nathaniel stepped forward, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table. Sign this and you walk away with your golden parachute. Fight it and we bury you in litigation until your grandchildren are bankrupt. Daniel's gaze dropped to the document. A resignation agreement with a generous severance, and an ironclad non-disclosure clause. His jaw worked silently before he grabbed the pen and slashed his signature across the page. Then he turned on his heel and walked out, the door slamming behind him like a gunshot. The room exhaled as one. Nathaniel's hand found the small of my back, steadying me. You could. I stared at the door Daniel had just exited. Not yet. 1 week later. The Sterling Enterprises atrium was packed with employees when I arrived at dawn. They fell silent as I walked through the doors, not the hushed, fearful quiet of Daniel's reign, but the electric stillness of a storm about to break. I took the stage without fanfare. By now you've heard the news, I said. The microphone carried my voice across the marble expanse. Sterling Enterprises no longer exists. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I tapped my tablet and the massive screens behind me lit up with a new logo. A phoenix rising from jagged steel lettering. Welcome to Vesta Consolidated. The room erupted. I let the noise crest before continuing. Every employee will keep their job. Every pension will be honored. And every division that Daniel ran into the ground. I tapped again, pulling up financial projections. We're rebuilding it better. A young analyst near the front raised a trembling hand. Why Vesta? I smiled. In Roman myth, Vesta was the goddess of hearth and home. The sacred fire that could never be allowed to die. My gaze swept the room. That's what this company will be. The applause was deafening. 10 years earlier. We just closed our first major deal. Daniel had taken the team out for champagne while I stayed behind, reviewing the fine print. I found the discrepancy at 1:17 a.m., a loophole that would have cost us millions. When I called Daniel drunk and laughing at some bar, he'd sighed. Just fix it, Evelyn. That's what you're for. The words had stung. But the lesson had stuck. Nathaniel found me on the rooftop garden of our new headquarters that evening, staring at the skyline where Sterling Tower's lights still burned. Regrets? He asked, handing me a whiskey. I took the glass, watching amber liquid catch the sunset. Only that I didn't do this sooner. He leaned against the railing beside me. The board wants you to officially take the CEO title. I know. And? I turned to face him. I don't want it. His brow arched. Then what do you want, Evelyn? The question hung between us, weightier than it should have been. I set my drink down. I spent a decade building someone else's empire. Now. My fingers brushed his. I think I'd like to build something ours. His breath caught. And when he kissed me it tasted like victory. The Wall Street Journal headline said it all. Vesta Consolidated's blazing debut. How a Scandal Birthed a $30 billion empire. The article gushed about our innovative structure, our employee-first policies, our explosive growth. Buried near the end was a single paragraph about Daniel Sterling, now a footnote in his own company's history. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another pregnancy test reminder. I deleted it. Some fires needed time to rekindle. But when they did, they'd burn brighter than ever. The end.